movie fee. Wombo combo. That ain't Falco.
Okay, this is going to be the last portion of the video where I'm trying to do 2 or maybe 3 test hands depending on how it goes. Just to give you like a brief look at what it could be looking like. Just always keep in mind and take it with a grain of salt that test hands are not really that representative, but I feel like a lot of people like test hands, so I'm trying to do some. I'm just not the biggest fan of it because you don't really keep that many things in mind, but also at the same time, if I pre-record it and then talk over it, I feel like it always seems kind of scuffed because you either have really good hands or really bad hands, to just showcase exactly one scenario which isn't really as likely in real tournament settings. As I always advise, just really playtest. Either look for some good people to playtest with, or if you want to waste a lot of time like I do, set up 2 Dueling Book accounts, one for testing, one for actual playing, and then just build 2 decks, or like your deck and the meta deck, and just play against yourself on 2 screens and just always compare all scenarios. But this takes a lot of time, so if you don't have to, I wouldn't advise to do it, but in general, yeah. So, okay, getting into the first hand. This is a really nice hand. This is really nice. And see that this is like what I mean. This is always the thing of doing test hands seems really scuffed. But anyway, I try to do my best because playing it optimally and explaining it at the same time can be hard. So you can overlook some things. First off, do we want to activate Wanted in the draw phase or in the main phase? As I always advise, only activate Wanted in the draw phase if you want it to be ashed, or you don't really have another play, or you need it to start your plays. But I don't have to because I have these 2 guys and even a position, so there's no point at activating it in the draw phase. So I'm just going into the main phase, so my opponent doesn't know I have it. So first thing, do I activate Wanted or not? This is like a checklist, okay? The start always plays out the same, I feel like. Second thing, what if I get trolled? If I get trolled, I have like Rykard that searches something, I have Rearhard that searches something, so I cannot get both under troll. And for example, like if I normally the Rearhard to try to search Meek, I lose to any hand trap, and I lose to troll because I cannot activate a position. So it's obvious that I start with Rykard. And now you could be debating if you want to activate the effect or not, but there's literally no reason to not activate the effect because everything else plays into troll. So you're going to activate the effect and just deal with it if the opponent has troll. Because even then you can just activate the Wanted. You have the droplet, you can just build a mediocre board, and you definitely survive with great follow-up. But maybe if people start testing the deck and they feel like, okay, I cannot figure out the lines under draw, then maybe I can do another test and video of every hand is under draw. So maybe that's a thing. But for now, I would just keep it that way. Okay, so next thing, always when you have these 2, you need to really think about it if you want to do the Rearhard beforehand, or if you want to play the Scareclaw line first and later do the Vanadium stuff. It really depends on how to play through Nip and stuff, for example, or like even Bistros. Good thing, Bistros are kind of rotating out of the main decks in the next format, and they weren't that present in the current format, but some were because of tier and stuff. But like the biggest point for going the Vanadium line now is you don't lose that much to Bistro, because if you're going for the Vanadium stuff later, when you try to revive the Rykard with a rival, it can get destroyed, and then you cannot go for the Realm hardline. But because you have a position, there's literally no reason to respect that, because even if you get nipped, even if you get destroyed, there's always going to be a way to get the Realm hard out, so you don't need to respect it. So we can just go the normal Scareclaw line, which gives us Baron plus follow-up, which is like the basic, because we add the field spell, activate the field spell, and grab ourselves the visas. Then we special the visas by popping the light heart, and before you activate a reviving the right card, we always just revive the light heart, because our opponent wouldn't nip us here because it doesn't get him anything, because we still have the rival. He can nip us later on, but we haven't even done 5 summons yet. So this is going to be our 5th, if I'm not mistaken. 1, 2, 3, 4 revive. Yes, this is the 5th summon, and we get our follow-up. And from now on we just can combo as we want to, because we already have the field spell for follow-up and, as mentioned, the wanted stuff. So what we can do is now activate a rival. We don't even need to be scared of a bistro because we have a position. And this is going to be the last point for our opponent to nip us here, which is really good, because just by the sheer amount of extenders we have, we don't need to be scared of anything. Which I feel like is maybe kind of good example of a first test hand to just see the general idea. Okay, so now we're nip proof. But one thing you should be considering if you have that good of a hand, okay? Really important. One thing you should consider, what if my opponent has an imperm or something and holds the nip, okay? Like if they have the infamous Valor nip imperm nip combo, which is pretty devastating for a lot of combo decks, but this is also why we're playing the hand loop, because it just achieves a lot more under these conditions, okay? At this point, we don't even need to search the Realm Heart with the Calarium, which is really good, so we can get out the Meek easier. So at this point, we have the Calarium, we have the Realm Heart, and we have the Wanted, and so we're going to activate the Wanted to grab the Diabellstar just to get some free value by setting the field spell before we activate Calarium, just so our cards are more free. And if you've seen the card or noticed the card, it's just because when I just keep talking, it can happen that I misplay, but in general we want to keep it as optimal as possible, so just don't worry about the card, I just want to keep it as optimal as possible. Okay. So we added the Diabellstar, which we can now special summon for free by either sending a card in hand or sending the Phobia. One thing you have to keep in mind is you can, or like you have to send a face-up card for the Black Witch, which is really important because, of course, by sending a face-up card, you need something else to just use it, okay? And so maybe you want to send a card in hand to later activate the original Synthоспire, sending the face-up field spell, which can be a thing. Or you can be like balls to the walls, which is the thing I would consider, the impermanent combo, the infamous impermanent combo, to just play around it by sending the droplet. Because if you just summon the Diabellstar now, then you do all your Meek Calarium combos and then send the Calarium, then you get a lot more value, but at the same time you're losing to nip plus impermanent stuff. And I feel like depending on the format, on how many hand traps there will be played, you should be considering these things. So if you just expect there are going to be many hand traps, then you should be starting by doing this line, sending the droplet, so you lose some value, which is fine because you're going to win the game anyways if all of this resolves. And then you set the spell, you activate the spell, sending the face-up Phobia, to get the Jet Synchron out. And as mentioned, you could have gotten more value in keeping the droplet in hand, but you would lose to like nip plus imper, nip plus Vader, things to bait out the Baron. And with this combo now you don't really lose to it, because you still have Abscission, you have Calarium, and now we're going to, if DB lets me, to do the good old Omega and banish your card from the hand. And at this point they're maybe forced to activate it, and if you whiff from their hand, then so be it, but you just get way more value out of it. And now we can do the good stuff to just go Abscission, special the Realm Heart, and search ourselves a copy of Meek. Keep in mind, if you would have searched the Realm Heart with the Calarium, it just gets the attack boost, so you have to take some other routes, or maybe set your field spell above it, but this is a play I'm really not a fan of. Or you just set your field spell with the Diabellstar. Like, a lot of possible scenarios, but I just wouldn't advise against setting the Rake Phobia, because you want to keep it in hand for follow-up. So, okay. We can space summon the Meek now. Our opponent has a card less in hand. I'm just going to put a token there. And okay, so we can activate the Calarium, and now we have two choices. Either adding devices to hand to just play around, not play around anything, but to have more follow-up, or just to add the Realm Heart to pop the Meek in special. And think about it like that. You can either Baron pop it, and then we have Realm Heart, Meek, which is 3 bodies, and 2 of which will make the Dissipator. And then you can Astrolaut to summon the Little Knight, but then you already used your Astrolaut, which is a little weird. You don't really want to do it. On the other hand, because we also have the Jet Synchron and a draw available, and because we have so many good things already, we don't need to keep the original alive with the wanted to just grab the Kurikara, because we pretty much get the perfect field, so we don't need to really care about it. So what we can also do is grab the Realm Heart and make an Amritara line to get also the counter trap into the play, even though we played around all the good stuff. So we're going to use Baron, pop the Meek. Doesn't matter if you use Baron or Realm Heart first, except for the moment where you whiff with the Omega. So we still have the Realm Heart in hand, and we get back the Meek from the Calarium, and we get our level 4 Meek. And now we can go into the Assault, bring back the Meek, and then we can go into the Dissipator. Since we're not going for cross sheep plays, because we will go for Amritara and Jet Synchron to make an IP, we don't really need to care about anything. Or maybe, as the things I mentioned, considering if you play against the Super Poly deck or not, we may be going for the cross sheep IP instead of leaving the Dissipator on the field. But this is not really that much of a difference on how you're going to play it. This is really easy to do. So let's just say we're not playing against a deck that can play Super Poly. So we're going to hand loop them again for 1. And now we can special summon the Realm Heart by popping the Meek, get the last Meek from the deck to the hand, and make it a level 4. And then we can go into the Amritara, searching ourselves the counter trap. Oh, my bad, it was a misclick. Searching ourselves the counter trap to just have the perfect field. Our opponent also lost another card, and now we can just make the wanted draw by placing the original on the bottom and get a card to just revive the Jet Synchron. Interesting card, which just still gonna pitch it because it doesn't matter what we draw at this point. And now we can get our IP, and we basically have the full setup. You could also make the SP red at this point, but I feel like the IP is just a little more chill, and then you have the perfect setup. Like, you already have Astrolaut access to just wipe the opponent's board or like crack back. You have the Rake Phobia to just get another Visors and then do another Astrolaut play, and your opponent has 2 less cards in hand, so they shouldn't be really able to break the board because they have like 4 cards in hand, and we have IP, which is 2 interruptions because of SP. You have Dissipator, so this is 3 interruptions, 4 interruptions, 5 interruptions. Yeah, this is going to be really easy game at this point. Like, I feel like you need to do a lot of things wrong to mess up these kinds of interruptions and still lose the game. So yeah, this is going to be the first test, and as mentioned, I'm sorry for the cutting. It's just to keep it as optimal as possible, and just talking and doing it optimal at the same time. Maybe the hardest thing for me, so hope you're fine with it. And we can do another test hand, which is hopefully a little bit worse because this was like a really good hand. But at least it showcased what the deck did. This is interesting, so we drew the counter trap. One thing to note is, like, if you're going second, you get then the additional draw, and so you have that card in hand, but I would say the hand is pretty average. It's good, so you can probably just break the board, even though you have the reframing, and maybe if you play it optimally, you can set up a reframing negate. Wrong card, I'm sorry. Just wanted to show it, like, for if you're going second. Okay, so we don't have the wanted, we have the black witch, so we don't need to think about draw as our main phase. And we can special summon the Fenrir because we don't have a field spell. One thing I really want to point out, if you open a field spell and a Fenrir, and you're not sure, or like you're thinking about draw, and you came to the conclusion you want to activate the field spell first, as it is your best add into draw. For example, it's a Calarium. This is like the scenario where it most likely happens if you have Fenrir and Calarium. Please activate the Calarium before you slam down the Fenrir on the field, because as mentioned, you want to go as few information as possible, and there's no reason to summon the Fenrir before adding with Calarium because you don't put a body on the field, and now your opponent just knows you have Fenrir Calarium, and maybe they're now more hesitant to not ash it instead of ashing it, because if you just start Calarium without the Fenrir, they may be going to ash it because they feel like you don't have that good of other stuff, and now they know you have a Fenrir, and if you slam down the Fenrir later after they ashed you, it's a bit more painful, I would say. Okay, so anyways, we now think about our draw, and I would say the obvious thing is we activate Fenrir first, because normal summoning Samsara going into Lightheart, searching as another searcher playing into draw, not that good. So I would just rather grab the Scare Cash to have better plays if we're going to get trolled. But in general, this just achieves very few things under troll, which is fine. As long as you survive, it's fine. Okay, so, but as mentioned, we're not doing test and through troll, but we can also do it if there's the demand for it. Okay. So, now we can normal summon the Samsara after we decided on what to activate first to search. And now we can just go to simple Scareclaw line, which is like, this is like, maybe like a, how do I say it? Like a checkpoint during all the combos in the deck, because you will always go like simple lines. The only thing you have to decide between is now going for the right card or going for the Visors. In this situation, I would say you go for the Visors, because you have Abscission, and also because you want the second Drake Phobia for the follow-up. One thing I would highly recommend you to try is to always get the second Drake Phobia, because this is like the most devastating point, because the deck puts up insane fields and at the same time gains a really good follow-up. Like, not the best follow-up in the game, I feel like there are other decks that have better follow-up, but you have a better board. This is like the scary thing about it, and so I would always try to go for the second field spell as long as it's possible. Of course, with position, even if you go for the right card, there are ways to do it, so this is not really a problem. But we just summon the Visas, get back our dude, and go into another copy to just grab another field spell. Okay, grabbing ourselves the field spell, and now we can just do the Abscission plays. One thing to keep in mind is if you're going to get nipped, like a good choke point would be getting nipped here, because you don't get the edge with Abscission. so this is a thing to look out for. At the same time, we have the Scare Cache, but we don't have Meek and Graveyard, so in the Nibiru would hurt, even though you have the Black Witch. There are lines around it, but what you could consider doing now is summoning the Black Witch by sending the Light Heart. I'm just going to show it to you real quick, and maybe we just play the line. Setting ourselves an original Symphospire. And now, of course we can get nipped here, but then we can just activate the original Symphospire, so we can continue. And summoning the Jet Synchron. And this is the point where we could get nipped, or like we summon the Savage and then we can get nipped. But this is just to insulate yourself more against head traps. And this is the thing, I'm really trying to preface this, because this deck is such a non-linear deck. There are a lot of different choices, and if your opponent is a super poly deck, this may not be the best line for you, because Savage plays into a lot of different things with super poly, so maybe this is not the best play, but it's definitely possible, and I just want to show this line so you have more pressure on your opponent to force out the nip. And now we can just continue playing. We have the Jet Synchron. We don't have a wanted draw, which is not important because we have these two in the graveyard to set them up. And now we can activate Obsession, but I would try to not use the Starfrost because I want to activate my Meek. So what I'm going to do is activate the Jet Synchron. Not activating Jet Synchron, I'm sorry. I'm going to summon the Scare Cache by its own effect. There is no need to activate the Jet Synchron. I just need another body out that is not the Starfrost to now activate my Phobia. And of course this loses against Nip Imperm, like the infamous combo, but I feel like there isn't that much you can do to just play around it with this hand. Or maybe I just didn't see it while talking, but I would advise you to experiment for yourself and just find out what's possible and what's not. We're going to activate the Killarium, grabbing ourselves a Realm Heart, and now we can use our Obsession to summon it, and grabbing ourselves a Meek. And this is why we left the Beasters on field, because we either needed to a way to send the Killarium and still pop the Meek, or to words, I'm sorry. Also send the Killarium so we can now summon the Meek because of the stats, which is like a little unfortunate, but it's a thing that doesn't really bother you anytime. Like, it's fine. I feel like there haven't been any situations where I was a little mad about the fact that it's just altering my stats of the Realm Heart and I cannot summon the Meek. Like, it's doable most of the time. Okay, so at this point we can do a lot of things. We have already 2 zones clocked up, meaning we can not do all the perfect things, but we can do a lot. Okay, so one thing we can do is go into Amritara to just grab yourselves, for example, an Arrival. But the thing is, like, you don't really get anything good out of there except like the Baron SP setup, which is cool, because you just go Amritara, grab yourselves Arrival, then link it off into Crush Heap, summon the Astrolaut, revive back the Meek, and then you can go Synchro Tenant to Baron, revive with Arrival, and go into SP, and then you have your bot. But for example, we could also do this way of going into the Baron effect, popping the Meek, and we get the exact same thing, I guess. Chaining 1 Meek, chaining 2 Field Spell, getting yourselves... Baron needs to be on the side, I'm sorry. Getting yourself 1 Meek, getting yourself another Meek, the levels don't really matter because you're just going to link them off. And what we can do now is either go for the cross sheep and do cross sheep IP, or to just end on the IP. Okay, even the sounds didn't really matter if you don't go for the cross sheep, but I would rather not go for the cross sheep IP, just so we can leave the visas in the graveyard. And then we have this field and the counter trap, meaning we have 3 Omni Negates, we have IP, we have Fenrir, and we have the follow-up with the Sinful Spoils, and we have the Phobia follow-up. So, pretty good board, I feel like. And you played around some things by going to Savage early. This is why it's here. So it comes up even if you don't get trolled. But as mentioned, there are other lines you could have gotten to maybe go for the Omega Despada hand loop. It was definitely possible with the hand, I swear to you 100%. But it just plays into more things. And for example, a good thing to think about is like how many hand drops your opponent plays. Okay, if you see cards like Veiler, you know there's going to be 9 to 12 hand drops. If you don't see cards like Veiler or Nip, there's probably maybe 6, maybe 9 post-sighting, okay? But those are things you're trying to look out for. Okay, so as mentioned, this played into Super Poly a lot more, so you maybe go to this Sparta Omega line if you're scared of Super Poly. But if your opponent doesn't, then you play it around more other things. Okay, and I feel like we do one more. And then I've been talking for way too long. Honestly, pretty impressive if you're still here. So yeah, okay. Interesting hand. Really interesting hand. One thing you're losing to is getting ashed on the Realm Heart. Impermanence doesn't matter because you have the double Realm Heart, which is pretty funny play, to be honest. So it plays the best around draw, but it plays the worst into ash on the Realm Heart. But even then you have like tactics and maybe can continue play. Okay, so no more summoning the Realm Heart. We can also grab ourselves a copy of Position, but it doesn't really accomplish that many things. So grabbing Meek, summon the Meek, and now we can activate the Realm Heart, pop the Meek, summon itself, activate the Meek to get ourselves a level 4, and just summoning in defense. So if we can set up a right heart line, then we have the body in defense position. So there's no reason in synchroing of the special summoned one. And now we're conducting our 5th summon, which is going to be Amritara. If the Amritara gets input right now, it's unfortunate, but it's fine. Doesn't really matter too much, just because you can banish it if you want to from the graveyard, and then you can summon the Samsara, and then you're going to be at something like Cross Sheep, Druid's Realm Samsara, for example, to just play. Or you could also, depending on the matchup, just make IP and end on IP Druid's Realm. So there are lines, but we're going to add the opposition with it. Where it is there. Okay, and then we can go into the standard Scarecrow line, which is, as mentioned, just another checkpoint. We're activating the Phobia, and at this point we can start again thinking about what we're going to add. It's either going to be the Rykard or the Visas, but because we have the Obsession, which grants us access to Calarium, we already have a way to search Visas. And also we already have some Samsara in hand, so we can just grab the Rykard and try to continue playing. Okay, next thing. Nib probably would have been activated on the Amritara, but maybe our opponent is greedy because he thinks we are greedy, playing way more into the Nib. But what he doesn't know is that we have the Samsara, we have the tactics, we have the Druid's Worm. So no matter what, and also we have the Obsession, we don't really need to care about Nib. So what we can do is to trying to set up a Rykard draw by just using the obsession and popping the Lightheart, getting ourselves the Calarium. So Visas will be our second defense position monster. And then we activate Calarium, grabbing ourselves the Visas. And as mentioned, we can just play into Nip freely because of the amount of non-energy. Like, these 3 cards are the cards that are just clearing this matchup right now. Yeah, so we can just use the obsession now. Banishing to summon the Visas. We could go for Baron here, but there's not really that much of a point. So we can revive the Lightheart and go into Lightheart. And adding ourselves the second field spell. Also, as mentioned, this is probably something like a checkpoint for your combos to just always grab the second field spell, because if your bot gets broken and you don't have the field spell, it's going to be really unfortunate. And yeah, so now we can summon the right card and just get the arrival and the draw, which is really nice. But one thing in general, only if you don't really need to care about the nip and stuff, don't focus too much on getting the arrival plus the draw. I know it's good, it's amazing, but in general, more often than not, this can really hurt you. So don't be too focused on getting it, okay? Withdrawing Samsara, which is cool. It can be anything, like we're leaving it as a blank, for example. And from now, we can freely decide on what we're trying to accomplish. Because we have the Samsara, we can do fancy things like Omega Disparter hand loop our opponent. Because this is the level 4 to go into the Omega, and we have the Truce Worm to also go into the Dissipator and to play a lot more into things. So basically we have like everything we need. At the same time, we haven't been able to pop the Meek currently, which is not a bad thing, but we can do it later. For example, like we can go into the Baron now and just use the arrival to summon out the right card. At this point, it doesn't really matter what you target, but I would always not target the Visas if not mandatory. Like if I don't have another choice, just if there's a Crowbus Jewel. I know we have Baron up, but in general, always target the thing you would care less about if it's banished. Yeah, so we're summoning out the guys, and now we can do our shenanigans by banishing these 2 and summoning the Astral out. And then we have the Crush Sheep trigger, which revives first and then gives everything 700 attack. And now we can Baron pop it. And Calarium and Meek triggers, so we get a level 2 and we get a level 4. And at this point we can just Omega Disparter hand loop our opponent, because we can now make the Omega to whip for 1. Then we see what our opponent is up to, or if it's not game 1, we already know, but in general. We know the strategy, so we know to play around Super Poly or not, or if we had non-engine like a Board Breaker, it's even good. Okay, so we hand looped our opponent once, and now we can just continue play. Okay, so we can use the Truce Worm, banishing literally anything from our hand to just do the Excel starters line, going into Excel effect, bring back, and then we can go into the Dissipator, and Dissipator brings back the Omega. And because we already have another excess of Visas, we don't need to leave the Omega on field to return a banished card. We can still do it if we're sure our opponent does not play Super Poly, but just for simplicity's sake, we're just ripping another card. So our opponent lost 2 cards from their hand. May I banish? I'm sorry. So, our opponent lost 2 cards, and now we can just go for an easy IP setup by shuffling back, I would say, the Amritara, because later on, like if the board gets broken, the opponent has an easier time of disrupting the Samsara summon by banishing the Amritara from the graveyard. Like if we activate Samsara, target the Amritara, and then he banishes the Amritara. We don't get the summon, so we keep the Visas banished, just because it's easier to summon the Samsara targeting the banished Visas than the Amritara in the graveyard. Yeah, so, and then we can just link these 2 off for an IP, and then we pretty much have a good board. We have an insane amount of follow-up, and at the same time we have another Astrolabe ready, and also we get back the Omega. We can link it off if we want to, and when we link off the Omega we can also put back another Astrolabe to just have 1 more Astrolabe. And yeah, so this is going to be pretty much insane and should be game winning if everything done correctly, and even if the bot gets broken you just get a lot of things. And because you're having the Masquerader, even if your opponent goes into Typhon, you can banish it, because right now we didn't get the counter trap, and yeah, but we're still proof of Typhon, which is a really scary card for the deck. Okay, so those were 3 test hands. I hope they helped you. I'm still not sure about it, but if you made it all the way through this video, please give me feedback about it, because I would really appreciate it. I really want to do more guides, more explanations and things, but I really need to get better at it, and I know it, but I need your feedback if you're listening, to just get through everything, okay? I would highly appreciate it. And with that being said, this is going to be the video about how to wombo combo, and hopefully it helped you. I really wish, because the deck is insane and I feel like it's really overlooked and maybe explained wrong by some people, but I hope this explanation helped you to get a better understanding of the deck itself, and maybe I can get into some replays once the new bundles hits and we get the new rating system and I get a good rating on DB. So if I have the time to play more, of course, next year there's going to be exams, but we will see. Hope you liked it, and as mentioned, please leave the feedback, like, subscribe if you made it already there. Yeah, okay, this was going to be it.